So today, unfortunately, we're going to talk to you about glycolysis.
Woohoo!
To do this, we're going to use our highly scientific building blocks from our childhood, also known as Legos.
Pretty high-tech.
So in this scenario, this is going to be our cell. And in our cell, you're going to find the focus for our conversation today, an enzyme called PFK1.
So PFK1 is the enzyme that catalyzes not the first, not the second, but the third reaction in glycolysis. It is the second irreversible step in glycolysis, the first being catalyzed by hexokinase and the third being from pyruvate kinase. So even though there are three regulatory steps in glycolysis, the one catalyzed by PFK1 is arguably the most important. So it is an allosteric enzyme, and we'll talk about the allosteric inhibitors a little bit later. But first, if you don't know what a kinase is, kinases are enzymes that catalyze the transfer of a phosphate group from a high-energy molecule and to a specific substance. In our example, the high-energy molecule is ATP, which is right here. And protein kinases are actually the key regulators of cell function, so that's why each of the regulatory steps we talked about that are irreversible in glycolysis are all catalyzed by kinases.
So as Natalie mentioned in this little scenario, this is our ATP with our three phosphate groups. ATP is an important catalyst in this reaction because the reaction involving PFK1 does have a negative delta G, making it irreversible, which is why PFK1 is arguably the most important reaction in the glycolysis pathway. Specifically, PFK1 turns fructose 6-phosphate, which as you can see here has its furan ring of 5 carbons and a phosphate group on the 6th carbon. When ATP is present, when I don't break the molecule, PFK1 turns fructose 6-phosphate into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate.
So, like I mentioned before, there are activators and inhibitors for every enzyme, but for PFK1, there are two activators I would like to mention today. The first being AMP, so if we take off this phosphate group right here, we have our molecule of AMP. So AMP signals to the enzyme into the cell that there is low energy levels, meaning that all the ATP has been used up and is now converted into AMP. The second activator is fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. So if we move this over to the second carbon right there, we have fructose 2,6-bisphosphate. And this is the allosteric activator that binds to the enzyme, and it stimulates glycolysis by activating this enzyme. The fructose 2,6-bisphosphate is actually converted from fructose 1,6-bisphosphate by PFK1, which is very similar to PFK2 in that they both have 4 subunits, and they're very similar in how they catalyze the reactions.
PFK1 has two major inhibitors. The first, technical difficulties, the first being a boatload of ATP. Yes, it's punny. Which makes sense because if there's already high level of energy in the cell cytoplasm, there's no need to make more. The other major inhibitor is citrate, which is a product of the Krebs cycle. And when present in high levels of the cytoplasm, inhibits the reaction of PFK1, specifically from adding the phosphate group, taking it from ATP and adding it onto the already fructose 6-phosphate.
So, hey Scott.
Yes, Natalie?
Do you want to hear a good joke?
Always.
So, what is the mitochondria's favorite aerobic exercise?
I don't know. What is the mitochondria's favorite aerobic exercise?
The Krebs bicycle. I thought it was funny. At least we ended on a punny note. Everything is awesome when you're Everything is awesome!